Hello, welcome back to the old BXR podcast. Today we have Agoat joining us. So he's a pretty fun guest. He got some cool things he's going to talk about. You guys might have seen he's been working on the Project Ringfall kind of, I don't know what to call it, mod project for Halo Infinite, and then he's also the design director behind Installation 01, which has been kind of a Halo fan game that's been kicking around for a while. So got some pretty fun topics. It should be a good grand old time. Jared's been playing his favorite type of video game, so he's happy. Hopefully he's been buying the fast travel though. That's important that he buys the microtransactions.
Oh, okay. That is. We'll talk about that later. That's ridiculous.
All right. Well, before we hop in, I mean, I got a lot of questions. I'm sure they do too, Goat. Why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit, and we'll go from there.
Well, you kind of covered a lot of it. Nice to see everybody, of course. I do a bit of modding, a lot of design. I work on Installation 01 for a year and a half, somewhere around there, and doing Halo Infinite modding. I kind of all over the place. Been around for a little while, so happy to be here.
Cool. All right. Well, so I guess let's start. So maybe start with Project Ringfall. I guess that one's more. I don't know. I made the rounds more recently, I guess. I don't know. But
Surprisingly so, actually. I very surprised that anybody saw it at all, actually. Didn't mean to cut you off. That's my bad.
No, you're fine. You can cut me off. But yeah, so what kind of inspired you to want? I know I've seen you post in like mods, like multiplayer mods, basically since Infinite dropped, I think. But like, what kind of inspired you to want to do like a full? I don't know if pro mod's like the right terminology, but like when I see your mod, it's like a full multiplayer kind of rebalance, like restructuring, and it reminds me of like that type of mod back in like a COD 4 or something like that. What inspired you to do that for Infinite, which obviously has like pretty poop mod support?
Yeah, there's zero mod support. Like, it is all unofficial tools. Not really supposed to be doing it, but here we are. Honestly, I was just kind of sitting here one night and I had just played some Infinite. Admittedly, was pretty frustrated and just overall not feeling too confident in Halo as a whole in that moment, which pretty out of character for me. And it just kind of hit me, and that's actually what the whole cinematic part of the trailer was about. Was just like, it was out of nowhere, just this inspiration. Like, wait a minute, why be frustrated when I can just do something about it? And so, I don't know, I'd say a day and a half later, here's Project Ringfall, here's trailer, which a lot of people saw, which was really cool. Really just kind of, it's really hard to explain. It was just like a sudden, like, this is going to sound a little extra. It was like just like a sudden fire inside me. I'm like, oh no, I can do this, and I should do this. And so now here we are. I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out so far.
Yeah, so what's like, I guess for people who don't know what Project Ringfall is, how would you kind of quickly describe it to people?
So you called it kind of a pro mod, but in a lot of ways, it's almost like, I don't want to call it an anti-pro mod, but I sort of envision it as the Halo Infinite that I thought we were going to get. Granted, I'm biased because, of course, I'm putting it together, but everything I'm putting into it is a mix of the game that we got, but also kind of the game I was hoping we would get. One of the big things, adjusted strafe, so it feels a little bit more like classic Halo, or just Halo that we're familiar with. A lot of retuned weapons. A lot of that too is based on a lot of community conversation. You see a lot of people fighting kind of like back and forth about social versus comp play, and I'm like, well, why can't we just have both? And so that's a part of it. To me, it is, if I were to make an update for Halo Infinite, what would I do? So everything that you see within the mod is stuff that 343 could easily do. It's not like I've made a custom asset anywhere. It's all tag edits. So it is something that, if they were to make something like this, something that we could see. So I guess the best way to describe it is a fan update of sorts. Like, what do I want out of this game? I know it's a little bit long-winded, but I'm not very good at explaining it either, so my bad.
No. I think you kind of hit the head there. Well, so let me kind of.
I do have a
Yeah, I do have a question real quick. How much further does the mod go than what you would be able to do just by adjusting custom game settings?
Way farther.
Way
So,
further?
oh yeah. So,
Because I know Halo Infinite, obviously, there's a lot of settings in there in the custom games. Like I know like you can bring back grenade jumping through adjusting things in Halo
Mhm.
Infinite settings. But yeah, just how much further does the mod actually go?
so custom games and the Forge have a ton of really cool tools, and this is not me throwing shade at those tools or anything. But it's basically like kind of cracking the game open, and you see all the tag data exposed, and being able to change just about every number that kind of drives the game. Good example is say vehicles. I think you can do a couple things with vehicles in the Forge. Um, I've redone the physics like entirely, so they handle completely different from what you would see in Retail Infinite, and different from what you could do within the Forge and custom games, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of values that you can tweak that way that you would never be able to see otherwise. So it's pretty involved. Like I've made like they have changed 280 numbers values somewhere along those lines. So
Hmm.
it's a lot.
Well, that's really cool to hear. I mean, because some people try to create classic gameplay within Infinite, but as many settings as there are in Infinite, there's only so much that you can really do. But yeah.
I've felt that limit too, because that was one of the
Mhm.
first things I wanted to do when we got Infinite. And what's actually funny is it's one of the first things that kind of drove me to kind of start with Infinite modding. Once I realized I could actually make things, I wanted to make classic because I couldn't do it in custom games. So yeah, I feel that.
Just
Now, talking of being limited, sorry, I was just gonna ask too. Seeing how things can be limited depending on how mods are implemented. Are you at all affected when the game is updated by 343 in any way?
Mm.
Kind of like how
Yes.
other games, you get a mod, it gets updated and no longer works. How does that affect your approach to making this mod? Like, do you have to keep redoing parts every time there's an update, or how does that work?
Yes, I had to remake the entire mod when we got the easy anti-cheat update. And then
Oh.
I also had to get around the anti-cheat, which was really funny actually.
Mhm.
But yeah, so whenever there's a major update, anything that affects like content in that way, everything gets moved around. The mod effectively breaks, and I have to go in and basically do it again. It's a lot of work.
Perfect.
just because someone asked in chat, you're using IRTV.
So I typically try to avoid like naming it outright, kind of
Oh shit.
CYA kind of deal. No, it's okay, but yeah, I use IRTV. Right now I'm having people use it to load the mod as well, so not that big of a deal. But yeah, I'm using IRTV.
So what obviously like you're attempting to kind of like play around with tags, edit it a little bit to make it play a little differently here and there. I mean obviously like I feel like strafe speed been one of the biggest complaints since the game dropped, and that I got used to it by now, but yeah, when the game dropped, that like I hated the instant back and forth strafe that's in Infinite, and there's always those funny clips when the game first came out, like when more people were playing like MNK and there wasn't aim assist and stuff, and you would just see someone get like just completely destroyed. But so what's kind of like the end goal, or is it kind of just to play around and see what kind of feels nice and what you can accomplish?
I have a handful of design goals in mind, and just the general idea is, where do we get Infinite to the point where everyone's excited to play it, right? And that's not me throwing shade at the game, but Halo Infinite is way different from really any of the other games, and I want to get the mod to a place where people are excited to play Halo and not just necessarily play Halo Infinite, if that makes sense. There isn't I don't have a checklist necessarily in mind, but I do have a number of goals. I want both social and competitive players to both have their home within Ringfall, if they so choose, of course. There's a handful of community issues that I want to tackle with the mod, and overall, there's not going to be a hard endpoint. It's not going to be, okay, it's done, because people are going to play. You're going to find new things that need to be fixed or balancing changes, that sort of thing. Really, I just want people excited again, and that's kind of the overall goal. And honestly, I'll be happy to maintain it so long as I'm able to.
That makes sense. So I know you said like how you're having people load the mod. Is there? I mean, I don't know a whole ton about infinite modding. I only like messed around with it mostly in the campaign when the game dropped and more people were making stuff for it. And I guess when like the Forge asset or like Forge got out before it was released and people were hosting like fudged local lobbies, is there a world where hosting like multiplayer lobbies for this will be easier than that, or is that kind of probably like the end, like the only way it can happen?
I haven't really said anything on it, so this is kind of, this is breaking news, as it were. So of course virtual LAN works similar to old Forge builds, that sort of thing. But I have spoken with people who do server hosting. You connect through a VPN. It's a whole thing. And the one person I was talking to, they expressed a lot of interest in hosting Ringfall. And so there is a possibility, not saying this is a hard confirmation, but I know on the technical side it's possible. But there may be a time in the future where it's easy to set up hosting. That way you can kind of just load up and jump in with your friends. I'm hoping that'll happen, but no guarantees at this point. It's all trying to figure out a lot of technical stuff as we go. There's a lot to it.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Well, what do you think out of all the different weapon balance updates that you've made is the one that you think like this is like the one that you think is the coolest, or like that you enjoy, that change the most? I don't know if that question makes sense.
No, it does. So this is kind of cheating. So I have a version of the battle rifle that technically crashes and I have to rebuild it every time. So I'm getting around this issue. But I feel like I've kind of finally solved the battle rifle issue where, competitive players love it and then social players really don't like it so much. They get kind of annoyed by it. But I've adjusted it so that you have perfect first shot accuracy and then kind of Halo 3 style RNG bloom. That was in the trailer I put in before. I'm really happy with it because at least in my experience, granted, I haven't had anybody else test it quite yet. It really does allow the battle rifle to just exist within social and not have it be like a huge problem. But it's still fun enough for competitive players, and it still very much feels like Halo. So that's the one I'm definitely the most excited for, and I'm really hoping I get around these technical issues. That way everybody can just like jump in and, I don't know, beat each other up with it. I'm excited for it.
All right.
That's fair. What do you think has been, why do you think there's always been such a huge divide on the BR in Halo? Because like, I mean, that's been around forever, right? Anyone that plays the game a lot or is slightly more competitive, I feel like always prefers BR starts or, in Reach, DMR, or Halo 5 pistol, that kind of stuff. But like the more casual side of Halo always loves auto starts, and there's always that clash, and even to this day people still like fight on Twitter whenever they're putting in like new Infinite playlists and stuff, and it's like, guys, come on.
I think it's kind of a complex issue. There's a lot of different parts, I believe. So one of the main things is the battle rifle dominates, right? And it's only gotten better over time. Halo 2, Halo 3, it was very strong, but random bloom really helped alleviate a lot of the problems with it, so you had to get in closer. MLG, of course, raised the damage to make the weapon more consistent. It worked pretty well back then. But now, especially with Infinite, you have the fixed recoil, so you can hit anybody from like cross map. It's really strong, right?
Mhm.
So I think people feel its presence a lot more, especially in social. The other part that I think comes into play is, of course, social media. People talk a lot more. So what would otherwise be kind of a smaller frustration kind of gets brought to the surface, and then people start talking, they go, "Oh yeah, I agree. This, I hate dealing with this gun," and then kind of just escalates from there. And I'm not saying that those feelings are like invalid or anything, but I do think that a lot of people consistently having the conversation makes that a bigger frustration than it would have been back in like Halo 3. So there's a lot to it, but I also think it's a solvable problem, and that's kind of what I'm hoping to solve. Fingers crossed. I hope people like it, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you just mentioned, you talked about how dominant the battle rifle is in Halo Infinite because it has the fixed recoil. But some Halo fans are also frustrated with the battle rifle in the past games, like in Halo 2 and Halo 3. And something I wanted to bring up that's kind of relevant because I've been playing original Halo 2 and Project Insignia recently. And I think a lot of people forget that it was much harder to aim in those older games, in the original games. That includes aiming with the battle rifle. Like in MCC, it is much easier to shoot with the battle rifle than it was in the original games because of all the enhancements made to MCC, like higher frame rate, modern aiming, mouse and keyboard support for sniping. Things like that has made aiming, a lot easier in the MCC games. And I think a lot of people just overlook that. They think that's how it's always been, but it's really not the case. Playing OG Halo 2 recently, and I'm playing OG Halo 3 back in the day. I mean, there are times where, I can strafe and players, that are like a medium distance away just are missing multiple bursts in a row with the battle rifle. In MCC, it's like everyone hits all of their shots. It's just because it's like that reticle is just glued onto you because of how much easier it is. But yeah.
I agree. I was also pretty terrible at Halo when I was a teenager, especially when Halo 2 was out. I was like 12. So I think that's another part of it too, right? Like, I'm 31 now. So almost 20 years later, like I've gotten a little bit better at FPS, and I think everybody else has too. I actually think that the average skill level for players, and like you said, like enhancements, frame rate, resolution, definitely a massive factor. But I also think just we've also been here a long time. We've had, over 20 years of just consistent skill development, better understanding of the game. I mean, now we're modding it, right? So there's so many different things that go into it, and especially when you have a skill-based weapon, like those are the weapons people are going to focus on the most, and they're going to want to learn all like the nuance behind those weapons. So yeah, I agree 110%. Like there's a lot of outside factors on top of that as well. Like it's actually really interesting to kind of watch the approach change, because I remember back in the day it was just jump in, grind out those games, and granted I wasn't really MLG, but usually you'd see people jump into the Octagon, for example. Now you have aim trainer programs. You don't even have to open up Halo to work on your aim. So there's a ton of stuff going on that's changed, and that's part of why I also think that the battle rifle does need a tweak. I still think that it's important that we have some skill-based weaponry in Halo, but just because a battle rifle exists on a map doesn't mean it should, destroy the experience for like half the player base. Well, I'd say more than half the player base realistically. But yeah, I agree 110%.
I will.
So, kind of building off of that. Oh,
No,
you
you.
want me to go or?
Yeah, you.
I,
you.
I was gonna say, just to kind of build off of that, do you feel like it's unnecessary to have a divide between ranked and social in terms of how weapons function, or kind of like with the beginning of Infinite, how we had like the 2-shot beatdown or whatever it was with the battle rifle, and then the 3 melee, or it's like 2 melees, 3 melees between social and ranked? Like, do you feel like stuff like that is unnecessary? Do you feel like there's too much of a divide when 343 does that in their games, to where if you had like these set settings across everything, fans would be maybe a little more, how would you call it, accepting of these kind of settings instead of kind of fighting over it on social media and videos or wherever? Or do you feel like it's really necessary to have kind of these split in settings between ranked and social to be able to cater to everyone kind of equally? Even though, let's just be honest, it's really hard to do that, and people are always gonna fight over it. But do you feel like those settings should align with one another so it's easier to go from one to the other, or do you feel like there needs to be that divide?
I would say it depends. Kind of, so if we're looking within Halo Infinite. Melee damage change, I don't think was good. I'll be open and say I think that was a pretty bad change.
Agreed.
That competitive changes should affect competitive, right? And I think the melee change, well, realistically the Mangler change, because that's kind of what it was targeting, right?
Yep.
I think that caused a lot of problems that we're still feeling today. My general opinion is that damages should be the same for both modes. Things that are fine to change, loadouts. So, hey, instead of the assault rifle, here's a BR. That makes perfect sense. If you historically, we've changed movement speed, but I do know that Halo Infinite's movement speed, I believe, is roughly that of Halo 3 MLG already. So that's not really a necessary change we would have to make. What I actually think should have happened, if the Mangler is a problem in competitive, when they vaulted it actually, I think it's been a little while. Anyway, when 343 vaulted the Mangler in comp and said, hey, this weapon's not going to show up here anymore, that should have been the change from the start. And it would have been the simplest change to implement. That or just changing its availability otherwise in competitive modes. I think that's acceptable to do. But to me, big widespread changes. Hey, we're gonna nerf melee across the board. We're taking away the funnest part of this weapon because it's a problem in competitive. It's no wonder people are angry at each other, right? On top of that, they buff melee for the battle rifle specifically, so it still had that 2 burst beatdown, and that was, I think a lot of people kind of saw that as like a slap in the face, right? Because it's like, oh, they took away my really fun weapon, but then the people that they took that away for, they get to keep theirs. Like, I can see why people were frustrated. And I hate to see it, but like I get it at the same time. But to answer your question directly, no. I think for the most part, social and competitive, they should handle pretty much the same in most cases. If anything, I would say that any changes should come from the community and not just a surprise change that 343 is springing on people. I think that was the worst part. It just was a surprise and not part of a greater conversation.
Yep. And I think that's one of the problems, right? The community will voice concerns, then 343 will take it, and they'll be like, let's go to the extreme with these opinions, and let's see what happens. And now the community's mad at each other because it's like the pros want a weapon removed, and the social players just want, have a gun to have fun with. And it's like 343's like, let's not listen to either side, and let's just do our own thing. And I always just feel like that's one of the biggest problems. They just don't want to do what the community says. Now, obviously, not everything they say is right. 343 is right about some things, but it just seems like in general, they take the feedback and they just go to the extreme with it most of the time.
I agree with that actually. And so there's something interesting that I've talked about really a lot with some members of the Installation 01 team, because of course social and competitive, this is something that we're going to have to deal with as well, right? Thankfully Ringfall is going to kind of pave the way for a lot of the learnings that we can implement there too. Not that that's not really the purpose of Ringfall. I just love to make Halo stuff. But even just including the community in the conversation, even if the end result isn't really what people are asking for, just by having that open dialogue, and then even if your decision is different, kind of explaining, hey, this is why we're coming to the conclusion we're coming to, everyone feels a lot better. People don't feel like they're just being, singled out or excluded. Suddenly now it's part of a greater conversation and people understand each other a little bit better. And overall just makes for a happier game overall. To me, it makes the most sense to, talk to the people who are going to be upset by your change the best you can. And that's not me throwing shade at anybody at 343, by the way. Just putting that out there because I try to be careful. But yeah, that to me, just conversation matters, even if it's ultimately just telling people, hey, I hear you.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like 343, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like they're just constantly playing a game of like trying to put out fires. Like they they get a bunch of feedback from like one group of people, and then they just like kind of figure out how to maybe solve the problem for that one group that they think is best, and they just do that, and they forget like probably affects the rest of the game, and then you end up with like a different fire. Then they try and put that out, and then you just kind of go back and forth.
It's really interesting because I agree. It does feel like in a lot of ways Infinite is missing kind of an overall goal. Everything kind of feels random. It felt like they really had like a strong game plan, and then curb slides came into the conversation. And from what I understand, they didn't know about that up until they started showing up at matchmaking. They start getting footage. And so now you've kind of got this weird problem of, okay, well, players are breaking our game. Like they are flying around. There's map flow has been thrown out. All of our intentions are now gone. What do we do? And they did hear the community on that one. But I will say, not that I have anything against curb slides. I'm not saying they're bad or take them out or anything, but part of me still wonders if that was the right decision to make. Because that's kind of what Halo Infinite is now. It's curb slides, at least on the higher skill level, competitive part of the game. It's really weird because I feel like there's a lot of different parts of the game that feel kind of random. Like so you've got you've got faster strafing because there's no more inertia. They give you extra velocity when you change directions. But now, like all the vehicle guns headshot, and that feels random to me, and I can't really wrap my brain around why they do that. There's a lot of new weapons like the assault rifle. I think they had that in Halo 5. Assault rifle does extra headshot damage. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think they did in the beta, and then they removed it for the full launch for H5. If I'm not wrong. Someone could correct me, maybe, but I thought
I thought it was in there.
They leave it in
at launch.
Jared, you were the H5
I'm pretty
grinder.
sure they did.
Did regular H5 have headshot damage for the AR?
I think they added that post update actually. I think that was towards the end of Halo 5.
They did some different stuff, yeah.
It could have been Infinite that had it in the flight.
Well, Infinite still has it.
No, Halo has it. Halo Infinite has it now. Yeah,
Infinite does.
Very frustrating because also the Needler has it for some reason.
Most of the
and
weapons
that's the thing. You said the vehicle weapons have it too?
Most of them, yeah. I think there's a one or two that don't.
I get what you're saying by it being random because like how many people who are using like a turret or something, any kind of vehicle gun, how many of them are actually going for that headshot, and how many of them just accidentally get the headshot? You know what I mean? Like, so I get what you're saying when you say it's a little bit random.
Most people don't know it exists. I put out a tweet recently like, hey, these things have headshot damage, and the amount of people coming in being like, what? Why are these? What? I didn't know that. To me, it's random and a bit too much. It's making it needlessly complex. Like something that I've found success with is just taking that off of a lot of weapons and hey, here's slightly higher base damage. So you still have a viable assault rifle, for example. But now you don't have to worry about the headshot. That is for precision weapons, right? Like we already kind of understand that social players really aren't big on the battle rifle and similar weapons. So why make them do the same thing with the gun they like? Why not just let them shoot their friends? That's the part that confuses me the most.
Kind of what always, yeah, like that's what always separates Halo from other games. It's not all about the headshot. It's that classic 3 shots to the body, 1 to the head, like in Halo 3. It's like just something about that feeling, like a lot of new people who come into Halo, or at least a lot of friends I've met over the years, they were obsessed with just aiming at the head and nothing else. I'm like, hey, aim for the body and then go up to the head, and it just changed the way played the games, and they did a lot better. And just that concept as Halo to me is just so unique. And I hate to see like all of this randomness with assault weapons and turrets and stuff. It's like I just feel like maybe it's a hot take. There just should be no headshot damage in Halo outside of like the sniper and weapons like that.
Well, what's interesting is when you keep it to precision weapons, you do a couple things. One, you keep the sweatiness and the competitive side where they appreciate that, right? But then also you're adding you're adding nuance to the sandbox. Okay, well, here's the precision weapon. What does it do? Well, if you don't have shields, it'll headshot you. It has pretty good range, so you have to be really careful. Well, here's the assault rifle and the sentinel beam. What do these do? Oh, well, you track people, right? You've attached almost like different disciplines to different weapons in that way. And by adding that unshielded headshot multiplier, you kind of muddy the waters and you really kind of strip away a lot of the weapon's identity. I actually think that's why so many of the weapons feel kind of samey in Infinite. Just by removing the headshot stuff from the assault rifle, it feels like a brand new gun. It's less exhausting to use because I'm not constantly sweating trying to get those headshots. I'm just jumping in, I'm just shooting people and having fun with it. And I agree. I think that's what Halo's missing. Like that's if I had to say there was one thing actually that I think 343 has been struggling with, it's just letting things kind of exist as they are. There's too much change for the sake of change. I think there was
Right.
I forget who it was who said that Halo has always been competitive or has always had like competitive in its DNA. And while I do think a lot of people misunderstand what he might have been trying to say, which I'm not entirely sure, there is a competitive spirit, but that doesn't go away without headshots. Like you still have fun beating your friends and just having fun, right? Let people sweat in their own space. They'll make that whatever it needs to be. And it's almost as if 343 is kind of trying to force this one weird play style, but it doesn't really come together in the right way. And I'm not trying to be too critical, but this is kind of a lot of the stuff I've been thinking about. Like as I've been modding it, there's most of the mod is actually peeling back a lot of these things and just kind of letting Halo exist as it is.
Let me ask you this. It kind of bounces off this. So obviously back in the day, H2, H3, Reach, even H4, before it got abandoned, the competitive community was completely ran by third parties. You know, it was MLG for a while, and then it was whoever ran the dying H4 tournaments, right? But all the settings were decided by a third party. Whereas since 343 with H5 and Infinite, right, all the competitive choices are decided by them. And what you've seen is, you know, the competitive game plays a lot closer to the regular game, right? Whereas like in H3, they're like kind of close, but Reach is like you're playing two different video games, right? Do you think Halo has been hurt by the fact that they've tried to like kind of combine the two into like one hodgepodge thing? Or do you think that's been like overall good for the game?
I mean, I think combining social and competitive in the way that 343 has done it has not been good. I think Halo Infinite is a very exhausting game to play. I feel like I can hop on Halo 3 and I can play that game for hours, no problems. I play Halo Infinite and I can play for 3 games before I'm exhausted.
Bro, listen, this is something I've noticed recently. Every time I'll pull up like a Halo Infinite stream, I get tired immediately. I gotta click off.
Yes.
Like I can't even have it on a monitor on the side while I'm working on something. I just don't even want to see it on my screen. And I think a lot of that has to do with how boring like the map aesthetics are. But yeah.
The thing I've noticed is it's how fast the players are kind of whipping around, right? Like the overall movement speed isn't bad, but really the strafing is a huge chunk of it because they're bouncing back and forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really tiring to keep up with.
Do you know, is there any acceleration to the strafe in Infinite, or like is there a little bit? It's just like really fast, or is it just no acceleration and it's instant when you strafe from left to right?
I'm going to give you 2 answers. Effectively, no. Between networking and just how quick it is, not really. Technically, yes. So technically what's happening is say you're going right and then you hold left. The game is going to increase your velocity going the other way. So basically it's giving you a bonus pushing back by 3.5 times. So that force that it's using to apply like the other way, basically, it's multiplying that by 3.5. So that's why it's so fast. One of the first things I did with Ringfall was just turn that back down. I turned it down to just above 1. And it's actually that easy to fix that part of Halo. You just it's a number. I actually did a speed run, and I was able to do it in less than 2 minutes. It took longer to load the game than it did to make that change, actually, which is really funny to me. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and I did notice that strafe adjustment in the trailer, and I did think that looked really good. I mean, there was like I don't like how 343 did the strafing with Infinite, but a side effect of it that I did like is that made it harder to hit your shots, and it was a more skillful to actually accurately land your shots. I just don't. I just think they went about it the wrong way, like by making it basically instant strafing from one side to the other. But like
actually
I think like an
if you
ideal fix would be you take like Halo 3, Halo 2 strafe with its acceleration, and honestly just speed the movement speed up a little bit.
So I
Yeah.
actually have something interesting to share with you. So I want to say this was like season 2 of Infinite, maybe late season. I don't remember when it was. Very early on, we actually hosted a bunch of free for all events where I made a custom game type. This was like right before I did all the modding stuff. One of the things was I lowered strafe acceleration, and while that wasn't really it's not ideal, it still kind of had a good enough effect of slowing down the strafing a bit. Uh, Accuracy actually went lower. We saw like across the board anywhere between 15, I think it was 15 to 25% lower accuracy. There's a really interesting thing that happens. So something I kind of go on about pretty often. And stop me if I get too much like into it. I talk about this idea of mental bandwidth a lot, and the general idea, and I think this is something that other people talk about. I probably picked it up somewhere, but the idea is you can only hold so many things in your brain at one time. If you've ever tried to juggle like 500 million things at one time, you get like stressed and it's really hard to do, right? So what ended up happening was players had to focus on their movement again. So they're trying to outstrafe people while also making sure like they were also landing those shots. But since they had to think about their movement, their accuracy went down because now they're juggling two different tasks. Whereas otherwise they could just, hit left, right on their stick really fast or mash out, AD. And so by having more to think about, accuracy actually goes down. And this was even like with higher level players too. It was actually really surprising to see. It I love this stuff. It's super exciting, but that's
No, that
actually
is
one of the
surprising.
reasons. Yeah.
No, you can finish.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Yeah, sure.
How much?
I was just gonna say it is surprising because you would think with slower acceleration there's more readability to it, but yeah, go ahead.
How long did people like play on the settings?
This was across a couple months.
Oh, all right.
So it was.
Were
it
they
was
like
long
jumping
enough.
back and forth though between that and regular Infinite?
They were, but a lot of people were also practicing too.
Okay. I'm just curious
main
if it was
thing-
like a muscle
yeah.
memory thing where you're still like just
No,
used to
no,
normal Infinite and you're
yeah.
just whiffing.
I wondered that too, but people described feeling overwhelmed.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and that
that's fair then.
they specifically were like, "Oh, it's my movement." But what's actually interesting, because you mentioned readability, on the social side of things, it actually just makes it easier for those players to hit people because they're not strafing each other out, right?
Yeah.
You can't just tap left, right because that doesn't do anything for you when like you've got that strafe inertia going on. So they can just shoot each other and it just doesn't matter. But on the competitive side, it changes everything. It's a really interesting balance between like the two play styles, even though you can kind of share them in the same play space. Like that's part of why I think Infinite Sandbox is kind of just all over, because a lot of it kind of feels like instead of considering what like players are going to do and kind of building off of what players have done, it's like they're trying to force people into one specific way of playing, and that just doesn't work. People are going to do what they want to do, or they're just going to leave. So, yeah, really, I could talk about this. I'm going to stop myself because I'll just keep going forever because I love this stuff.
You're good.
But,
No. Here, let me give you one more question then.
Sure.
Okay, what do you think is more important, to build the movement mechanics of the game first, or to build the weapons first, to build around the other? Like, which way do you think is the best way to go about it?
In Halo or in general?
Just in general, or it could be Halo. Just whatever. Let's do Halo since that's what we're talking about.
So the main thing, actually, really with any game, you're going to build your maps around your movement. So whatever the player is capable of, that's going to kind of dictate level design. That was actually something that I didn't ever really think about until working on Installation 01. And I realized, oh wait, yeah, that's kind of a big deal, and that also has influenced the way I've tuned Ringfall as well. All stock maps work on Ringfall because I didn't adjust the base movement speed, and any like jumping changes I've made still fit like the player capabilities, we'll say, in Infinite. But you have to build that movement first. Now things like, say, strafe inertia, that's not going to influence level design as much. That's more like a player to player kind of thing. I think that's one of the things that's going to go hand in hand as you design the weapons. That being said, kind of the overall, we'll say like broad goals that you have, you're going to figure out a lot of that really before you even get started. Ideally, you're going to have like a design document of some sort. What are you aiming for players to do? Where's the fun? Who are you targeting for your audience? That sort of thing. So ideally, you'll have a rough like mental idea as you're building this document, and then as you build the game, of course things are going to change. You're going to figure out, hey, this doesn't work, this does work. Players really like this. Things are going to change, but overall, you do have to have that movement in place. That way, you have a framework to build the rest of the game around. That was like a very like long answer to that, and I apologize. Like I get like really into this stuff.
No,
I appreciate it.
you're fine.
Something I wanted to point out is we've obviously been talking a lot about Halo gameplay, and I feel like a lot of the conversation, like with Halo, has gotten away from that. Like, I mean, you remember back with Halo Reach and Halo 4 and Halo 5 during that era. I feel like maybe a little less with Halo 5, but it was still there. I feel like you had more people in the Halo community collectively talking about, discussing Halo's gameplay and the aspects of it that they didn't like. And now I think we've gotten to a point where a lot of people just accept what it is. And that could just be because a lot of people just don't play Halo anymore, like the classic Halo fans that would be, talking about the aspects of Infinite's gameplay that they don't like. They may have moved on and they're not even concerned with Halo anymore. But yeah, the conversation, it seems like, has gotten away from gameplay, and me included, I think there's still a lot of people that have their issues with Halo Infinite gameplay. Like people like Sprint. I think Sprint is still very much an issue. A lot of people just accept it now, and maybe that's just because they know it's not going anywhere, but it is still very much an issue. Like, I don't care that it's been in every one of 343's Halo games. It's still an issue.
Something that I've always told people, that I think the biggest crime that Halo 5 committed was not having like a classic style game to go with it, and also not being on PC. Halo 5 would have ripped faces on PC. People would have loved it. But I agree. Like the thing I think about too is like there are a handful of people who really like Halo 5, and I do genuinely think that Halo 5 was good. It didn't launch very good, but I think towards the end it really accomplished what it was trying to do, even if that necessarily wasn't what a lot of people wanted. I don't think it would have been a problem if we, say, just had another game that was, hey, here's our classic game. Like, I'm not really a campaign guy, so I have trouble keeping up with like the stories, that sort of thing. But like, imagine if you had Blue. So like I think about like Blue Team, right? And they represent like, here's older Halo. Here's where we've come from, right? And then you've got Fire Team Osiris, I think they're called.
Yeah.
Those could have been two separate games entirely, and that would have been a really like unique thing to do. Or even just like two halves of the same disc, because ultimately you can just change tags and kind of like what I'm doing, right? Maybe swap out a couple models so visually it all makes sense. But if you had a shared experience of both of those, I don't think anybody would have been upset. And I actually, part of me wonders if Halo 5 would have done a lot better critically if they had done that, because it wouldn't represent losing anything.
Are you talking about both experiences within one game, or are you talking about two separate games?
Either or, honestly.
Okay. 'Cause, I mean, two
They,
separate games. I mean, then you run into issues of like resources and budget and all that, and time and
you
stuff
do.
like that.
I think
I mean, you could do it within the same game too, or just share assets, that sort of thing. Like, this isn't like a hyper detailed thought. It's just something I've
Mhm.
kind of thought about here and there. But I think Halo 5, in a lot of ways, represents losing what Halo was. Halo 4 was similar enough to where it wasn't that bad. I think a lot of people, at least I had hoped that we'd kind of go back to more classic style gameplay after 4. But
Mhm.
with Halo 5, it was kind of, oh, we're not getting that back. This is where we are now.
Right. And some
And
people might disagree with
yeah.
what you just said about 4 being a little more like Halo, but I do agree with that. That Halo 4 absolutely feels more like traditional Halo to me than Halo 5 did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Granted, a lot of my view is not just the overall package, but like the way the game feels. It's more like, not to hype myself up too much, but more like designer focused, right? Like I'm thinking about like little nuances and that sort of thing. Like you still had strafe inertia in Halo 4, for example, which is a huge part of the Halo feel. Stuff like that is kind of what I think about. And honestly, I think you could just, if you just took out sprint and the loadout stuff, which I actually didn't hate that much. I think different weapons would have suited better, but I think if you took that stuff out, like you've just kind of got just kind of a funny looking Halo game. Like I didn't hate all the new armors, but like gameplay wise, yeah, there's a lot of Halo still in there, and I think over time we've lost a lot of that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think Halo 5 is loss in a lot of ways, and I think that's one of the bigger problems that like we're still coming to grips with even today.
Right. And yeah, Halo 4 definitely had its issues. Like, I mean, Halo 4 didn't even have D-scope, which was a big problem. But
I forgot
I mean,
about that.
Yeah, I mean that's a massive one right there. But Halo 5 with all those abilities, people thrusting in like every gunfight I get into, I mean that was a drastic change to what Halo was. What Halo was for so long before that. And I mean, if people like Halo 5, that's fine. Like I can respect that. You like Halo 5, you like that gameplay, cool. But it's hard to deny that that was a drastic change to Halo's gameplay. So that's kind of where I stand on H5. If H5 was a different game, a non-Halo game, I think a lot more people would have loved it. I may have loved it.
Exactly.
But it was Halo.
You know,
Replaced our mainline Halo game that year. You know. I mean,
That's
a classic game.
But that's one of the biggest issues, right? If you took Halo, but if you Halo 4, 5, and Infinite, give them completely different skins and took away the name Halo, you would think those 3 games were made by 3 different devs. And I still think that's one of 343's biggest problem. They can't just stick with a vision. Like I would have rather got Halo 5, like Halo 2.5 instead of Infinite. Like if you're gonna go with something, just stick with it because it doesn't even feel like a trilogy, right? Like Halo 1, 2, and 3 were like that feels like a game trilogy. Halo 4, 5, and 6, they just don't feel like it.
They are so different. They are like different visions with each game. It's wild.
I think a lot of that's reactionary too. I think they really focus on the criticisms of each game instead of kind of understanding like, hey, our game is not for the entire same audience, which that's its own criticism. But especially like Halo 5, where you still have like really dedicated Halo 5 players. Like that's one thing I see a lot is a lot of people who play Infinite look back to Halo 5 and they miss that game a lot, right? I think if 343 had just kind of realized, hey, we're not capturing everybody still. We have a new audience. Granted, a classic game would help with this, of course, but I think we would have a stronger Infinite or whatever Infinite would have been if they had just kind of stayed focused on what they were trying to do instead of kind of just reacting to the community input that they get. There's something I was talking about with a friend of mine on Iowa earlier is players are going to always show you how they feel on something, but they may not always tell you outright. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of understanding that players just don't have, and that's good. That's honestly what makes games fun. If everybody knew how every part of games worked, we would all be extremely bored. And so being able to kind of pick apart, like, for example, earlier you mentioned the strafe being too fast. Me picking it apart, I can go, oh, so it's inertia. Like you're not carrying that momentum as you change direction. It's not a speed issue, but I guess you could say it's a physics issue, right? Being able to pick that apart is really, really important as a designer or as a programmer too. There's a bunch of people that go into that. But it's almost as if 343 kind of took everything like very face value and tried to change it based on that. And I'm not saying that's what they did. That's just kind of what it feels like in a lot of ways. And that's why I think Infinite's kind of, I don't want to say weird, but definitely different. And it doesn't really, it's like visually they try to capture that classic feel, but then like you play the game and it is not classic in the slightest. It is completely different.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we wrap up the infinite bow there? Let me ask you one question, and we'll just have you answer because I think the rest of us have talked endlessly about Infinite on this point. But how do you feel about the health of Infinite today, and what do you think? Like, where do you think it goes from here?
That is a good question. So, I went to HCS Arlington, and met a lot of people there. Stumbled through a lot of conversations. Clearly, you guys can tell I'm not the best at talking like this, but I saw people who were genuinely excited. Like everyone was they would just love the game, having fun. But I couldn't help but notice that whenever you started like really digging into like how the game feels and their experience overall, a lot of people share the same criticisms. You know, weird strafe, the stuff we've talked about, right? I've been saying this for a while, but I really do think that if 343 intends to bring Infinite up and really get people to play it, they're going to have to make really bold changes. And that idea was kind of what Ringfall was based on. Like, hey, what could this look like? Almost like a blueprint if they were to use it in that way, which I don't think they would. Maybe, probably not. But they're going to have to I would say if they really want to revive Infinite, I guess we'll say, and bring it back closer to launch numbers, they're going to have to change a lot. I don't know if they will do that.
Think they
I
even
hope
have
they
the
will.
resources to do that?
I figure if I can do it here alone in my apartment, then they can do it for sure.
All right, fair enough.
Like
All right.
it's all numbers. I don't know. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that real quick. I know, like I said already, we are talking a lot about gameplay, but when it does come to reviving Halo Infinite, I honestly think it will take more than that. Like, or I mean, I should say it could take more than that, because a lot of people have their gripes with current Halo, and even if a game is good, it can still not be successful. Like it's Halo's in a tough spot, and it'll probably be tough to dig it out of the spot that it's in right now. So it might take more than just a good Halo game at this point. It might take a big new mode that we haven't seen in gaming before. But I do think if Halo's kind of maintained what it was doing all these years, and we kept getting these great games that felt like the older Halo games, I do not think Halo would be in the spot that it is in today. So it's my 2 cents.
I think that's entirely fair. Something I do want to give them praise for is, at least to an extent, I still have my issues with the shop, but at least the battle passes, you could hang on to them.
Oh yeah, that was definitely cool.
And so that was, I honestly think if between something genuinely unique, whether that's like that battle royale everybody was talking about forever, or whatever it might be, or stuff that relates closer to what I dive into, like massive sandbox changes. I really think if they were to lean on empowering the player as a consumer, fair purchases, stop jacking up prices for no reason, things like that, I do think they could bring a lot of people in. The part that does give me worry in that regard is, they added cross core for shoulders and I think helmets, and then they immediately did a price hike. And so it kind of felt like what would have been like a really big moment for the community was almost like a slap in the face, because it's like, hey, thanks for being here. Give us more money. And it's like, things haven't been good, man. This has not been a fun time entirely. I don't know if I want to give you more money. Like, I was excited and then gone. So I think that's another part of it too. Like, read the room, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. And I don't know if they want to read the room. So I don't know.
Yeah, I feel you there. All right, well, why don't we transition away from Infinite? Because I feel like we probably could talk about it forever. Let's talk a little bit about your other project, Installation 01. So this has obviously been a Halo game that has been. When was the original announcement?
Way too long ago. I think it's getting on 10 years.
It's been kicking around forever, and so I think a lot of people have many questions about Installation 01, and I have actually some probably like hard to answer questions in terms of like what you guys are even trying to do at this point. But let's start with.
I need an exact release date and time.
It's one thing I don't have. Yeah. I could do my best to answer everything else. So that's we're trying to be more open. Admittedly, one of the big like hurdles with showing everything is I'm both design director and the operations director, meaning like social media and stuff. Of course, we brought in Burnt Waffle recently, and so I'm working on getting him set up. That way, things are a little bit easier in that regard too. But yeah, release date is the only thing I don't have, and trust me, every time I hear it, it's like, oh man, like I get it. I followed IO1 forever before joining up, and even when I showed up, I'm like, okay, so when's it coming out? Like, what are we doing? So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Not for real. Like I'm obviously it'd be nice to have it, but like with projects like that are being worked on by fans, and I'm guessing a small team, it's like that it'll be ready when it's ready. Like I can have patience for something like that,
Well, so I will say that the team overall kind of shares the sentiment of like, we wish this was out. And I will say there's a couple reasons why it's been so long. The main thing has been, people joke about it, but engine changes. Originally, I think originally Bean did like a mod of some kind. I'm not too familiar with that part, but eventually it was on Unity, and that's the Unity era is kind of what most people are familiar with. There were different builds, I believe, of Unity, and the major roadblock was networking for the most part. Turns out that's actually really difficult to do.
No kidding.
So eventually, Unity turned into, I believe it was CryEngine, if I recall. It was CryEngine. And then that became a custom engine, Plasma engine. And then I want to say it was, granted, I'm kind of summarizing a lot of different engine versions. I got on the project, I want to say, a little over a year and a half ago. And that was on Plasma Engine 2. And then I want to say it was beginning of last year, we announced, hey, we're going to Unreal Engine 5. And this part isn't me just like trying to hype people up. This is just the genuine truth. Unreal Engine 5 has represented a lot more than just a new engine. It's been kind of a whole refocus because networking in UE5 is frankly a lot easier. It's one of the first things we had, and that's actually why we went to UE5. Like, hey, we can just do this now. So we're already playing multiplayer games together and don't have too many problems unless there's a random bug here and there that you see in development. But the networking, by and large, it works great. But UE5 has kind of represented, like, hey, this is it. This is going to come out. This is the game we are building here on Unreal Engine. So I know it's a lot to ask for me to say, hey, we're working on it. Please give us a minute. But like, I promise, like, it is coming. Like, it's real. We play it.
Yep. So
Speaking of Unreal 5, this is a question. Sorry. I have to ask this. I see a lot of Halo fans asking this when the whole 343 making their next Halo game on Unreal Engine. How hard is it to capture the feel of Halo on Unreal Engine? Because I see a lot of people worry about it, that it won't feel like Halo on that kind of an engine because of all kind of the generic games you get on it. How Halo does it feel?
So I will say that Installation 01 feels more and more like Halo each day. Granted, we're still working on different parts. Good example is fairly recently, I just wrote up a massive document on aim assist. Basically, this is what we need. This is how it should behave, that sort of thing. We have kind of a basic version now, though it's a little too accurate. It redirects the bullets, whereas Halo will actually typically redirect the shot grouping. So you have like a ghost reticle of sorts that moves onto target. There's also magnetism too, how it feels to kind of stick to a target. Something that I actually feel that Infinite kind of missed the mark on a little bit. So it does take time to kind of build that, but to me, there are a couple of key components that we're focused on. Something that I'm sure you guys have noticed, say like Halo 3, you jump onto a hill and you land on the hill, you jump off of it, your trajectory is going to change, right? You can get a little bit of extra forward momentum. That's something that we're actually playing off of and something that we already have. We're actually modifying the spring jump that you've actually seen in like say Reach or Halo 5 to kind of better work with that a little bit, and it'll be toggleable too. So if somebody doesn't want to deal with it, you can have like the true classic experience as well. But that's one of our focuses is player physics and overall player handling. Things like strafe inertia that we've talked about, turns out that was actually a little bit easier to implement, and I'm constantly working on it, trying to get it to feel a little bit better. And I'm never going to be satisfied completely, just because like I don't think anybody in game dev really is. But it for us, it's definitely working. I'm actually really excited about how good it feels already.
So let me ask you this. So obviously, when Installation 01 like first started kicking around, like Halo hadn't been on PC since like 07 with Halo 2, right? So there was a huge demand for a Halo game on PC. Obviously, by the time that you guys put out Installation now, MCC's on PC, Infinite's on PC, whatever future Halo games are going to be on PC. Like what do you think, like, because Installation 01, as far as I understand, is mostly multiplayer focused, right?
It is entirely multiplayer.
Okay, so
we do
like,
not have a campaign.
So like where do you think it fits, like, in the Halo like landscape of all these other games that obviously like, are a bit more established? Obviously had like, well, MCC is just, the full like 6 full Halo games or whatever.
All of them. Yeah.
Infinite had hundreds of millions of dollars of dev work put into it. Like, how now, since all that stuff's on PC, where does Installation 01, like, where are you guys trying to have it fit in that landscape?
So something that I noticed is, so we got MCC on PC, we have Halo Infinite on PC, and player numbers have definitely kind of gone down over time, especially like with MCC. Like really with both of them. But the thing I noticed, especially with MCC, it's like we have the games, right? And even though they have their issues, there's also really great community projects as well. What was it called? It's called Project Cartographer, if I remember, the Halo 2. I don't want to call it a mod because it's more than that. And you still have Custom Edition, which now is supported within MCC. But I also still don't see like huge numbers in those. Oh, I don't know anything about Cartographer, of course. But with MCC, I don't see a ton of player numbers. I actually thought it'd be way more than that, because that's actually really good work done over there. I think players want something that is new, but is still rooted in classic Halo. I think they want a true sequel to like Halo. I'm going to say Halo 3. Some people may say Reach as well. We're taking learnings from all the games and making sure that we're making the best game we can. But I think people want to see like another true classic Halo game, which we haven't had in a while. And like, I love Halo 3, but that game also came out forever ago. Like, we have played Halo 3 a lot, right? So I think a good part of it is it will be new. So here's a brand new game for people to sink their teeth into. It will still feel very familiar because we're not doing a remake. We're doing our best to kind of make a sequel to Halo 3 reach that era, right? I think the other thing that's going to be hugely important, and granted, a lot of this is still stuff we're working out, but we want to empower players as much as possible. And so, whether that means like say dedicated servers that they can host themselves, or kind of something that I've talked to the team about, and this is not a confirmation, but this is something that I'm kind of thinking about. People have their favorite weapons from across the series, right? So let's say we have the assault rifle. Well, how difficult would it be for me to say implement different versions from across the series? That way people can kind of take that and build the sandbox they want to, right? Granted, that's not something we've locked in. That's just where our mind is. But overall, we want players to be able to kind of create the grassroots experience that they want to. Because something that, we realized kind of talking to each other is Halo is something different for everybody. For some people, Halo is going into custom games and, playing wacky mini games like they want to go play Jenga or they want to race warthogs around. For other people, it's MLG, HCS, just hyper competitive sweatiness. For other people, it's big team battle, right? And so for us, we want to empower players the best that we can. And so to me, that's going to be one of the key differences is, we're not owned by Microsoft, right? So we can, if we are able to implement something on a technical level and it makes sense, then yeah, we want to put in more stuff for players to play with. To me, those are going to be like the two big things, and at least from a design perspective, there's other cool stuff going on too. Like we've got some killer maps that we still haven't shown yet, or I was trying to think of how many, but I don't know off the top of my head. But the other thing is too that I also think about is the awesome work done by the artists. It still feels like Halo, but at least, of course, I'm biased, but I get really excited whenever they have something new to show us in our development chats. I think everyone has really like put forth some awesome work, and I think it's just going to feel new and fresh and just exciting just to finally like for players to get their hands on and just have fun with. Sorry, I know that was like a lot, and I hope that made sense. I don't know if it did, but
I think you answered it. But well, let me ask this. So we've obviously we've seen other Halo fan games. We've seen other huge Halo like mod projects. Most of them never come out, or they kind of come out and instantly like fizzle away, right? So installation comes out, maybe it gets some hype around it. With you guys, with it being a fan game, and there's obviously not going to be like funding, do you think that you'll be able to like maintain interest? Because I mean, as much as it stinks to say, like these days gamers are so like conditioned that if you're not constantly getting new things, it's just not worth playing, right? And obviously like, and this will lead into my next question, but like with you guys deciding this to like keep it as a Halo fan game, not even like a Halo mod, this is like a full built up from the ground game, you're always going to have that problem. It's never monetizable, right?
So being honest, there is a chance that it comes out and it's exciting for a week for people and then they're done, right? That's part of the risk. At the same time, we also made a promise forever ago, hey, we're going to do our best to put a good game out there. For us, that's the part that really matters the most is, hey, we promised. So we're going to do everything we can to fulfill that. Something that I want to do personally is post-launch, I want to make sure that we're still talking to players, right? If there's a community problem where, say you have the, not that we have the mangler, but say you have the mangler problem kind of pop up again. Okay, well, how can I jump in? How can I talk to people? And how can I make sure that everyone feels heard while also finding a good solution that really fits everybody, right? While that's not enough on its own to support a game, to me at least, it's something that I know I can do to help empower people, right? The other thing that we've also been talking about is while we haven't locked anything in, how can people create their own content? Hey, we're running on Unreal. Should we leverage the Unreal editor? That way people can make their own stuff too. What's the extent and the scale of that? And so that's also something that we talk about internally as well is, hey, how do we just let people jump in and make the stuff that they want to see? The other thing too is we do have a lot of people who are on the project and they're still learning, say, a new part of what they do. Like for me, I'm learning a lot about Unreal Engine, right? My history is with Infinite. So UE5 is a brand new thing. And so something that I'm not just hopeful for, but I would actually kind of bet on is as we progress, more people are aware, hey, IO1's still around. Hey, we're still doing good work over here. People are going to want to join up and be a part of that, right? We get applications all the time. My hope is that that may be able to continue later on as well. And if it makes sense, on a team level, hey, the game is out, maybe we add something. And again, not saying this is the case, but if that makes sense at that time, well, if people are still wanting to jump on, well, maybe that is possible. But you definitely raise a good point. Like, we don't have a budget, right? We don't have, there's no money up front. So everything that we do, we have to be pretty careful with, especially since we want to make sure Microsoft's still happy and we can't really pay anybody. That is the rough part for sure.
So
all we can really do is our best, though.
Let me ask this then, because
Mhm.
across all of gaming, not so much Halo, because I feel like Halo it's been a while since it's had its heyday, but you constantly see games come out on Steam that are like the spiritual successor of X game, right? Where it is a fully monetizable game. They're usually like indie projects. Sometimes they do well, sometimes they don't. But you can sell it, or you could, if you wanted to be free to play, you can put microtransactions in it or whatever. I always wonder with stuff like this that takes so much work, why not just have generic looking sci-fi dudes? How much, with it being multiplayer only, there's no lore, how much does it really add to have the Mark V helmet? How much does it really add to rip a straight Halo map, which I don't know if you guys have done, but how much is that really adding to the game when look at Splitgate? You can have maps that look almost like Halo maps. You can have armor, you can literally use the weapon sandbox from Halo, but you can sell a video game doing it.
So that is something that we've talked about, and really there are two big parts. The first thing is we've had so many people come into the project, so many people have left the project as well, and so you kind of have this weird spot of, okay, well, who gets paid, right? Who gets paid? What do they get paid? How do you measure that? Because we've been on several different engines at this point, so there's a lot of older work that isn't being used, right? So it's hard to kind of figure that out in a way that is honestly fair and honest with people. So that's the first part, but the other thing is too is we did make a promise to people, hey, we're making a Halo fan game, and to us that's really important. That's not to say that would never change, with us, doing Halo versus, our own kind of thing. But so long as we don't have any concerns from, say, Microsoft coming down on us, which they seem pretty okay with us still, which is great. Realistically, that would be the biggest driving force there is hey, is Microsoft going to tell us, hey, you can't do that because we don't want you playing with Halo anymore? Well, at that point, that's something we're going to need to revisit. But otherwise, we want to be fair to the people who worked on the project in the past, and also we made a promise. It's kind of like that. If you want to look at it from a, I don't want to say profit-driven perspective, but from what is each individual person standing in for right now? Our portfolios look really cool, admittedly. For me, I put a lot of stuff that I do on IO1 into my portfolio. And basically, I'm kind of building my way towards, a professional position as a designer within whichever studio, right? So there's still things that we all individually benefit from, but yeah, overall, we made a promise and we want to keep that.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, I guess we'll just kind of we'll wait and see when it comes out. I mean, I'm excited to play it, man. I mean, like, I obviously I mean, we haven't seen a whole ton of it, but like, Halo stuff's always fun. Like, I'm interested to play it, but it's just kind of those have been my thoughts on it. But why don't we? Do you have anything else you want to say on Installation 01 before we kind of move on?
I will say the reason that we've been a little quiet lately is, I'll be honest, it's my fault. I overloaded myself with a lot of work, and so that is why the blog post is way behind. It was supposed to come out forever ago. I don't want anybody to think like that's an indicator of problems on the project. I'm a little tired, so I'm working to get that done. That way, people can see more of the game, and we also we're actually working towards posting more clips from playtests as well. We do want people to see like, hey, this is what we have. This is what your patience has gotten you. And at this point, I feel like it's the only right thing to do is to continue showing people what we've got going on. It's been 10 years. Like at this point, it's like, hey, we have to show, hey, we're not lying to you. We promise. Here's the game, right? I don't want anybody to think that we're just, taking everyone's attention for granted. We want to deliver on something really cool, and we want people to see that as we go.
All right, that's fair. All right, well, let's this won't be like a super long topic, but obviously I know I've seen you tweet sometimes about it, and I know you've responded to me. So I think you play some Quake champions in your time. So obviously there's been like rumors that it might reboot Quake. What do you think? Do you think there's a world where Quake is a relevant multiplayer game again, or do you think they doom it and it's just a single player game?
I have very complicated feelings on it because Quake is very much a product of its time. But I don't know. I think they would do something like Doom, but my hope is that the multiplayer is still Quake at its core, because I would love for people to be playing Quake again. I'm definitely not the best Quake player, but like that game is pure fundamentals, and I would actually say anybody who wants to get better at like FPS should absolutely be playing Quake at least a little bit. But it's dicey because I don't think most players would go for a modern Quake, but I really want them to. So I don't know if I have a definitive answer to give. I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful, but I don't know. We'll see.
No, that's fair. Jared, what do you think about Quake these days?
Well, I actually, this is how I feel. I think they should do a single player campaign first, like Doom. I think it's been so long since Quake has been relevant in like a meaningful way. And I think making a really, really good single player campaign to like get old fans back and get a bunch of new fans and get everyone hyped about, the Quake series again, and then do a multiplayer maybe only game, or maybe do a, a sequel with multiplayer after that, would be a better way to do it than if they just maybe jumped into a multiplayer type and have it do bad, and then, well, Quake's just dead from here on out, right? Like there's no room for mistakes with Quake, in my opinion, at this point. So I think doing a single player game, seeing what players like about that single player game, from maybe the weapons, the movement, and stuff, and then building upon that to make a multiplayer out of it, afterwards, I think would be a smart way to go about it. Because man, I miss Quake so fucking much, and I just I don't want them to thrash it anymore.
I worry if they launch Quake without multiplayer. I worry that becomes a thing. Like I think you have to do the complete package. Honestly, I think you have to have both a single player and a multiplayer. I honestly think that linking it to Doom in some way would probably be the safest thing for them to do. I- it's tough. Like modern gaming is like really different. I don't know if I'm hopeful, but I do think they have to have a multiplayer component. Like as much as I would love for that to kind of be like split and they kind of learn from the campaign, because I think with campaign they have a little bit more wiggle room. Um, I think you have to have both. At least like you have to announce both. I think maybe you could do like, hey, here's campaign, and then multiplayer comes later. Maybe as like some sort of free offering. I don't know. It's dicey. I don't know. I don't know if you can tell it. Thinking about stresses me out.
No, I feel you there. I just struggle to envision a multiplayer Quake that would actually be like faithful to what Quake was, that has any like mainstream success, because I feel like, you know, Quake Champions was their attempt to modernize it a little bit but still keep it rooted in Quake. And obviously like you just ended up pissing off like everyone, sort of, you know, like the old school Quake heads are like, what are these champions in my Quake game? I'll just go play Quake Live or whatever they play these days. And then like the mainstream FPS kids, like, this shit's insane. Like it's still so hard. Like you're like every character has like different movement ability, like different movement tech for some reason. Like you have, plus you still have like all the difficulty of Quake itself. Like I don't know how you could. I feel like Quake at its core these days, like you said, it was a product of its time. It's just like too hard. Like it's, you know, people play like COD because you just like open up your thing, hit left trigger, and it like aims for you, right?
I wonder if they remember how I think it was. I know Unreal Tournament 3 had it. I don't know about the older ones because I actually didn't play this, which I need to. I actually wonder if a big team battle style component could do well. Like, so you've got your core duel experience and maybe some like small scale FFA team deathmatch. But then what if the big like mass appeal draw was like a big team battle component where, you know, now you've got vehicles, and no, it's not authentic to Quake necessarily, but it brings people in, and then maybe from there you'll have more people try out the more competitive stuff. And I think if you focused on movement, actually, because people love to go fast and Quake is really fast, I think maybe if you kind of focus on that a little bit as well, you might be able to bring people in. It's I don't envy the guys who are trying to make all that stuff work. That's a tall order. I would be like, I'm pretty confident in my understanding of like designing FPS. I'd be very intimidated to work on Quake.
I mean, I wouldn't be against like. Go ahead. Not.
Yes. Mhm. Yes. So I know UT3 definitely did. They had these hoverboards, which were pretty fun. And I think UT 2004 also had. I think it was 2004. Also had vehicles in it. You had a lot of large scale, in at least some of the games. You had a lot of like larger scale stuff with vehicles and point control. Uh, UT3 actually had this like link gun that you used, I think, to capture points and repair vehicles and stuff. Uh, that game was actually really cool. And if Epic ever gets around to finishing the re-release that they promised us, super recommend you guys try it. It was a good time. It's it's different, but still very, very good.
Just gonna say I would love big team battle Quake because I think it could absolutely work. When you think about Quake's movement, like that speed adrenaline that you get, and just moving across large scale maps, and you add in like maybe portals and vehicles and grabs lifts, and you have just all of this fun chaotic stuff with like 120 players like that. There would be no experience like that out. You could even call it like Earthquake or something because of the massive scale of it. Like
I
it
like
just
that.
I would love that so much, man. I think it would be a blast, and it could be casual, right? Because of the chaos, but yet you'd have the skill of like better players who can learn to move across maps really fast. Like imagine CTF on a big like on a large scale map with Quake's movement. Like that would be so much fun, man. I'd enjoy the hell out of it.
Think
Paul-
about Oh, what?
I was gonna say, I apologize if you mentioned this 2 seconds ago, but there was what was it? Is it Quake Wars? Like the big scale Quake game?
I forgot about that.
I
I've actually
forgot
never
about
played that
too.
one.
I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about. It's Quake with vehicles.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've heard the name Quake
Is it
Wars.
Quake Wars? I think it's
I-
Quake Wars.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
it's
so.
Quake. I forgot about it too.
I just never played it. I didn't know what that was.
too. That might have
I
been
did
the
too.
most Quake I've played, if I'm being honest.
I'm a Quake noob. Like
Yeah.
I played Quake Live and I play Champions now. Like I've technically played like 1 and 2, but like I wasn't there like in its heyday. That's probably actually a good play. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like that come back and maybe linked to Doom in some way.
I think the thing with Quake Wars is it didn't
Ooh.
really. I don't think it had that movement speed. I don't think it really felt like Quake, if I'm remembering correctly.
How big were the teams in Quake Wars?
I'm not too
You
sure.
know what?
Looking at footage, it looks more like a regular FPS game of the time than Quake.
Mhm.
You
To
know,
be honest,
something I
but
think about.
Okay.
So Doom Eternal kind of has crazy movement, right? Like,
Oh,
granted,
yeah.
it's not, you're not b-hopping, right? But also, towards the end of the game, I think it was actually the DLC. You had this large scale. God, I don't ever remember plot points, and so like I remember gameplay and those details. I struggle with storytelling, and I don't know why. But towards the end of the DLC, that large scale assault just on the big bad's base. We'll pretend I'm being spoiler free. I actually think you could just tie it into that. You had a lot of really cool character designs that looked both like Doom and like Quake. I actually wonder if you could build off of that because people kind of associate the two already. Why not turn like a Quake reboot of sorts instead of trying to make a sequel? Hey, here's Quake. It's built off of the new Doom universe. And so you could still have, the Quake Ranger. You can still have all, all the skins and characters that you've seen from the games already, but just tie it into like maybe that end conflict, and maybe that's where you start off and you get sent off somewhere else or something along those lines. Like I actually think that the best approach they could do is still be respectful of where Quake came from, but use Doom as kind of a launch point, because I don't think you capture Quake again, not as it was, but I do think you could make something new and kind of like that.
that's fair.
The opposite of what I say about Halo, actually. Really funny.
All right, well, why don't we open up a little bit? So besides, I mean, anyone can hop in. Actually, no. Before we do, BHB, you've been playing some old school OG H2. So how's that going, man?
It's been a lot of fun, but I mean, it was a process getting it set up. I had an original Xbox because you need an original Xbox to play this. It doesn't work on 360. And I bought an OG Xbox like 2 years ago, and I never even tested it. But I was hoping it would work, and it didn't work. And I went out and I found a retro store near me that I didn't even know was there, and they had one Xbox left. So I got that. That worked, thankfully, and set the whole thing up. It's a little bit of a process, and so I think if it wasn't as involved, then I think there'd be more people on it. But yeah, I set it up, and I've been loving it. I think it's a lot of fun. Like I mentioned earlier, there are differences between original Halo 2 and MCC Halo 2. I do think OG Halo 2 plays significantly different than MCC does, where it's a much easier game. But yeah, I've been really enjoying it. Just it's not too populated, and I don't know how long it's gonna last. So
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of been my thoughts on it because
Yeah.
I hopped on like the first weekend it came out, and like I was able to find matches pretty consistently if I only wanted to play like Team Slayer. Once you ventured outside of like Team Slayer Rumble Pit, like the rest of those playlists are all dead, which is unfortunate. But like you said, it is a even like so you went the original Xbox route. I set it up through the emulator, but that's also like setting it up through the emulator was a whole process too. Plus, it runs pretty badly on the emulator, so you don't even get like the
Yeah.
full, you don't even get like the true OG experience. Because like, granted, like obviously if you play OG H2, you know it's lower frame rates, it's all that stuff. But like on the emulator, like the floor will just disappear. It's an interesting. I don't
That's
know.
awesome.
right.
The emulator's
Yeah, and
interesting.
I've tried looking up footage of Halo 2 on the Zemu emulator, and I hadn't found any footage where it doesn't have issues. Some were
Yeah.
better than others, but yeah, that's my thing with emulators. That's kind of why I'm always hesitant to play a game on an emulator, because I know that it's probably going to have all these issues that the original game doesn't. And
Yeah.
you know, something I didn't realize how kind of difficult it actually is to hook up the original Xbox to a monitor with HDMI, because there's a bunch of different methods, but a lot of those methods are shit and will give you a
I
really
forgot
bad
about that.
picture. Like, I actually ordered an adapter for this, so I could hook this up through HDMI, and it's one of the things that are recommended, like one of the good ways to do it. But yeah, there's like HDMI, you know, cables on Amazon you can find for cheap, but they give you a shitty picture. You can run component cables through like a component to HDMI converter, and that gives you a horrible picture. But so yeah, I was kind of surprised by how difficult it was to actually get this thing hooked up.
Yeah.
But I'll do it. I'll do it to play OG Halo 2. I mean, that's just how much I love it, man. It's really not nostalgia like a lot of people say. I've said this multiple times. People think, you know, some people think I like the older games just because of nostalgia and I was a kid. Yeah, that stuff. I do have nostalgia with all that. I have my memories. That was all great, you know, being young, not a lot of responsibilities. But those games are genuinely still just so good today. And I'm talking about the original games, not MCC. I mean, it's still fun to play the games in MCC, but I prefer the originals.
Those games are not only incredible, but there's I figure it was, I think it may have been Halo 3 actually, but there was like a talk, I think it was like an hour and some change on just the fire rate of the sniper rifle. Like Bungie went crazy figuring those games out. And like when you play it, it doesn't feel complicated. You jump in and you're having fun and you discover things. But
Mhm.
man, nothing beats those older games. They are so good.
They
It
are. And like you say, you could just
Oh.
jump in and you could just have fun immediately.
Yeah.
You know?
It's funny. So in Halo 2, I was actually banned from matchmaking pretty quick. Me being a dumb kid, I joined a level 50 clan. Turns out they were cheating. Surprise.
Hmm.
So like, I mean, I want to say it was like 2 or 3 years of Halo 2, just custom games alone. And I never got bored. The only reason I stopped playing was because I got a 360 and then I was playing Halo 3 instead. Like
Right.
if despite all the glitches and everything, which of course some of them were really cool, like the one you guys are named after. Those are the closest thing I think we have to perfect games is OG Halo. They're just that good.
Yep. The gameplay, the variety, like the aesthetic, the weapons, the enemies. I mean, it really, yeah, it really does stand out amongst other games, even games within that genre.
I miss old school tricking back in Halo 2, like breaking out the maps, doing super bounces. That was most of what I did back in the day. And
Yeah, I did it recently, just walking around on
Nice.
Lockout with a friend, just doing super bounces. He was showing me some tricks and stuff. Like It's just too good, even today.
I used to be able to break out of like every map except for like Waterworks, because like I don't even know where you break out at in Waterworks, but like that it to me it says something. Like even when the game is breaking, it's still great. Like it's like breaking in like the perfect way that just adds to like the mystery and just excitement of like I can't. It's just too good. Like it's hard for me to put into words actually. Like I'm
Yeah, and
really
like the
glad
old
you guys are getting to experience that too. Like it's awesome.
and the older these games get, I mean, the more people like forget just how good they are. You know, newer generations don't even experience them, and it's a shame because like it really is just that good. And I mean, I don't know. People, I guess gamers just want different things these days. I don't know.
I hope like so obviously Project Insignia is revived like all, well, not all, but like it game by game is reviving like OG Xbox Live like piece by piece, which is pretty cool because they added Forza today. I'm gonna go try and play it after this. But
It's awesome.
I know obviously Halo 3 has Project Sunrise, which allows you to play like the original Halo 3. But my only problem with that is like it's not we talked about how hard this is to set up. That one's like even more of a pain. Cause like you need a 360, but you need a modded 360 unless you join someone else's lobby that has a modded 360. So I hope like I don't know the technology behind it, but like I would love to see like an Insignia style thing that just works for like OGH3 because I'd play a lot more of that than OGH2 just because like that was more my game. But like getting like the old school playlist back and stuff would be a ton of fun.
Yeah,
I miss
I'd be
Halo
on it right
Online.
now. I'd be playing while I'm doing the podcast if I could.
Yeah.
And some like I remember when the servers got shut down for Halo 3, and I saw people saying like, "Oh, if you guys are so sad about the servers going down, you should have been playing this whole time." And I mean I've made my return to OG Halo 3 a lot. Even when it was 15 years old or whatever it was. Eventually, it got to the point where I just couldn't find games at all. So that's kind of why I stopped playing. But if I could have consistently found games on that, even if it was just in Social Slayer, which seemed to be the most populated playlist once the game was pretty dead, I would have been playing a ton of it. But it just got to a point where I couldn't find games at all. So
I
Yeah.
honestly wish that Halo Online hadn't been shut down because that's exactly what that was. Like, granted, it wasn't 1-1. Projectile speed was different, but like that, like I had never seen people more excited than like the 1 or 2 weeks of Halo Online. It felt like everybody. It didn't matter like how long you'd been gone from Halo. Everybody pulled up. They wanted to play Halo Online. They wanted El Dorito, and I really hate that had to get shut down. Like
right.
I
Man,
feel like that one of the best weeks of my life in terms of like gaming. Like it was just it was perfect.
right. Yeah, that was cool. I mean, I was following El Dorito for a pretty long time before that. I think it was called the 0.6 update or
That was
whatever.
the big one.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was following it for a long time before that, and like just reading the blog posts and stuff, and enjoying the game, getting excited about things, and yeah, it is a shame that it had to suffer that fate.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's
It
still
was a bummer.
there.
Yeah. Well, it's still playable, but you have to find the files and it's also like dead.
Yeah,
It's
that's fair.
probably not
It,
single person on it.
yeah. I mean, I played it last year for a video, but it was like I'm in some Discord that still like people
Ah,
still work on it, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna get on." I'm like, "Okay." All right, so I launched it up, but like it also hasn't progressed in what like 4 years since it was shut down because obviously like there's still some people doing like some bootstrap stuff, but like the main group all as soon as Microsoft came in, they all moved away. Rightfully
all right.
so, obviously, but yeah. All right. Well, Mr. Jared, what have you been up to? I think I know, but why don't you tell everyone else?
Oh yeah, I have been playing Dragon's Dogma 2, and it is one of the greatest worst games I have ever played, and will
Hmm.
probably be on the Game of the Year list. And the reason I say that's one of the best worst games I've played is in terms of like core game design, it is absolutely amazing. From the exploration, the combat, just like the larger than life epic battles against these mystical creatures feel absolutely amazing. But the problem is the game runs like shit. The performance is terrible. Like there are literally players going into the main cities and killing off people to improve their FPS on PC. And now it is a lot better on console. Like it runs pretty decently, but on PC, it's so horrifically bad. It's like it's just unreal. And then we have this whole microtransaction controversy going on with the game because I mean, let's be honest. At no point should a $70 game have microtransactions for stuff you can buy and use in game. Now, I will say this about the microtransactions: even though they are unacceptable, people have completely overblown what they do. Like, there's a lot of misinformation about them. People are saying, "Oh, you can buy the ability to fast travel." Or you can buy to create a new character, and that's not true. Like the fast travel crystal you can buy, what it does is it's a crystal you can place anywhere in the world. Okay, so it's like buying an airplane, right? You buy your airplane, you place it at the airport. It's like, okay, this is where I want to fly from or go to. And the problem is, to use the crystal, you need these stones in game called fairy stones to even fast travel to them or to other port crystals. So it's like, yeah, you bought the airplane, which you can only buy one, by the way, but you can't even use it unless you play the game and find these stones, which can be found at pretty much every shop in the game, just about. They cost quite a bit of gold, but it's not really a big deal once you play the game for like 10 hours and you have like plenty of resources stocked up. But it's like, and you don't even really need the crystal, right? This port crystal you can find like I'm trying to remember how many I have right now. I have 7, okay, and I got like 4 of those within those first 10 hours of the game, and I use 2 of them. I don't even use them all. They just sit in my inbox like they're pointless. It's like these microtransactions are completely pointless and can be completely ignored, but it just sucks that a game that's this good, and if you look around at all the reviews, everyone praises the gameplay, the combat, the systems in the game, but between the performance and the microtransactions, it just leaves a sour taste in so many players' mouths because it's like, why is this $70 game have these microtransactions? Like, it's just ridiculous that Capcom is still doing this shit, and they do this in all their games. Resident Evil 4 has tickets for upgrading weapons. Devil May Cry 5, you can buy red orbs, which is like XP. In Monster Hunter, you have like character changes you can buy to edit your character, like fully edit your character. Like you can change hairstyles and stuff, but to actually like change your character from male to female, you have to pay money to do that. But even then, it's limited. Like you can only buy so many tickets. And it's like Capcom has this weird way. It almost feels like the devs are being told, hey, we have to put these in the game because the higher ups are telling us to do it. So how can we do it as harmlessly as possible? Like it's just so weird the way Capcom approaches these microtransactions in single player games. And like I said, it sucks because what could generally be a game of the year contender, it might not win or have a chance of winning because of this whole controversy, because it really is a fantastic game. And kind of going back to Pop Q2's point of how like it's not just about nostalgia in terms of gameplay with Halo 2. Well, Dragon's Dogma 2 pretty much plays exactly like the first Dragon's Dogma, which a lot of people, didn't play or said it wasn't really that popular back then. It's basically the exact same game. It's just better, right? It's just better. It's a bigger world, a couple more mechanics, more monsters and stuff, but it's essentially the exact same game, just done a little better. So it's like, also they have this great mechanic where you can basically kill off entire towns because you have these little side characters called pawns that you create, and when other players take them in and they return them to you or whatever, it's a complicated system I can't quite explain here, but basically they can get sick with a dragon's plague, and if you ignore their complaints about the dragon's plague, then you'll wake up one day and everyone will be dead in the game. Basically the entire towns will be dead, and you'll literally brick your game because like main characters die. Like
That's
it's a
awesome.
crazy, yeah, it's a crazy mechanic, and there is a way to revive people, even though I won't say it's a pain in the ass, but there's a lot to it. But It's just like it's like this weird archaic old school game design in this game that shouldn't work, and a lot of people would argue, oh, no one nowadays would like this kind of mechanic. Everyone fucking loves it. Like, you have people posting videos. It's like, oh, my pawn is complaining to me. They're not following my orders. I know they're sick, so I'm gonna throw them off a cliff and kill them. Bam, that solved the issue. So it's like there's
That's
so much
awesome.
fun to be had in this game, and so many just unique, cool moments. It's just like it really is like there's no other game really like it. Like, Dragon's Dogma is its own beast, and I highly recommend it. And obviously, I'm doing a review on it. I'm going to be talking about more, so just kind of keep an eye on it. But I recommend
The
it
part,
despite its flaws.
the part that sucks is like you mentioned how like rough the microtransaction conversation's been. That's actually why I didn't pre-order it. I love Capcom games. Like I love Devil May Cry. I love Resident Evil. I actually play Street Fighter pretty frequently, and so here's Dragon's Dogma 2. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. And when I heard about the microtransactions, I just went, no, I'm good. I actually backed up off of it entirely because like it's like you said, like they put in every game, and for me, I'm kind of at a limit where I'm like, I really don't want this anymore. Like I'm really tired of just like getting a game and like, hey, give us more. Like I would happily just do the $70 price tag and then call that square, but no, they're still asking for more and more on top of that. So like
Yeah,
that's actually why I
that's
miss it
understandable.
entirely.
Right.
I
Yeah, and like
And
a
yeah,
lot of people are complaining like that. Oh, if you're complaining about Dragon's Dogma 2 having it, why didn't you complain when Resident Evil 4 added it in, or this game or that game? And I think there is such a thing as breaking the camel's back. We're just kind of to the point where so many games have them. It's annoying at this point. It's like, why do we have to keep doing this? Why is this even necessary? And the other thing I
people
hate is
people
that
keep
when
buying them.
people Yep, yeah, well,
That's
exactly, right. People keep buying them, and but the
Mhm.
thing is, when you're having conversations about this stuff, like our friend Kevin asked me about, hey, do you have to pay to make a new character? I'm like, that's not true. Like, that's just blatantly not true. And it's like when you're having a discussion about this kind of stuff, microtransactions or whatever, I think if you're gonna oppose it, you have to be honest about it too. You can't make up
Yes.
stuff about what
yeah.
the issues are. You need to be honest about it if you actually want to see change. Because if you just make up stuff and let's say the devs or whatever talk to the higher ups, or the higher ups go, oh, I hear a lot of people are talking bad about our game or something. And then they look at it like, well, that's not true. That's not what we do. Okay, these people are nothing. Let's ignore this because these people obviously aren't. They have no good faith in this argument. So, and obviously, I'm kind of going off on a rant here, but it's just like I don't know. It's just like
No, I
if you
actually
when other stuff, you got to be honest about it if you really want to see any kind of change. And obviously, you need enough people to care to have change as well. But it's just I don't know. It's a slippery slope that's just hard to really hard to say what's right or wrong.
I actually think I think being honest is actually a really important part of these conversations too. Um, it's to me, if you have to lie to make your point, then you don't have a good point to make, right? And so
Yeah.
with things like microtransactions, right? It is if you're not laying things out as they should be, right? If you're not going, hey, this is what you can buy, this is this is the scope of it. How are people supposed to make informed decisions on what they'll tolerate, right? Because like for me, yeah, I don't mind buying the occasional skin in a game. When I played like Rainbow Six Siege, I spent a lot of money on that game because I didn't really mind it. I bought the yearly pass. I'd buy skins from time to time. It wasn't a big deal to me, right? But now we're cutting into gameplay, and for me, I thought that the microtransactions in Dragon's Dogma 2 were egregious. I had heard nasty things, but now you're telling me that I need to revisit that because I don't actually know like what the scale of that is. And so that's going to change my perception of the game. Like I may have bought it before, right? And so
Exactly.
I definitely agree. That's actually I actually think that there's a greater conversation to be had about accountability as what's the best way to phrase it? I guess, individuals on social media because this stuff can spread like wildfire. And
Well,
Yeah,
I
something
just
else.
wanted to say this too. Like in the game, there's these things called rift crystals, and like I said, you have these pawns, which are like you make your character, and then you make the pawn, which is like your side character, and they can have different classes and stuff. And other players can rent your pawn, and like some of the microtransactions you can buy are these rift crystals, and now these rift crystals are what you use to like hire the services of pawns. Now, if they're the same level as you or lower, it's free to hire them, but higher leveled ones cost, more rift crystals. Now, the microtransactions, they're all one-time purchases, and I believe a majority of them were actually part of the deluxe edition of the game, and then they just like pulled them from the deluxe edition and then just separated them all out to make it look
Sounds like
like a
Capcom.
ton of microtransactions. Yeah, like it's stupid, but like I think the max amount of rift crystals you can get was like 10,000 or 12,000 if you bought them all, and it's like you can't hire like like a pawn way above your level is like 30 plus thousand rift crystals, which you're never going to use them anyways, because one, why are you rushing through a single player game? Like that's why I don't understand. Like all these people are complaining like, oh, like I don't understand why people even buy these microtransactions in single player games, because why are you rushing through a single player game? It's not multiplayer. It's not like you're trying to buy an advantage. It's not like Diablo Immortal or something, paying your way to victory in PvP. It's like you're playing a single player game. Enjoy it. Like, what is the rush to get to the end of this game? Like, just fucking play the game.
Can I hop in there? So I think now I haven't played Dragon's Dogma. This may not apply to Dragon's Dogma. I think the problem is when you put in microtransactions in single player games that skip portions of the game, that if you think about the way games are built to monetize us, in theory, you could probably make the logic that in many cases, maybe they made the game grindier or more annoying to play to incentivize you to buy the microtransaction. If you remember when like Assassin's Creed Valhalla came out and you could buy the level up skips,
Yep.
well, remember how long it takes to level up in that game naturally. Now, I think that's the problem with single player microtransactions, is because clearly sometimes, now probably not like the core developer, but like the person who makes the decision to add that stuff in is they're having to make gameplay concessions so that these microtransactions have a point. If you make a totally like an amazingly fun video game that never gets grindy, no one probably buys them, right? Because you're just playing the game. Or the person that buys them is like the dad that plays for 2 hours, and that's fair too. Like nothing against that guy. Like if he doesn't have 60 hours, I don't know how long Dragon's Dogma is, but like if he doesn't have 20, 30 hours to get all the way through, if he wants to fast travel around and save himself an hour, like so be it. But I think the concern is like it's such a slippery slope, because like if it's purely there just for convenience, then it's one thing. But like as soon as you can tell that maybe they moved something slightly farther, maybe you have to walk past the same spot multiple times and it's kind of annoying, then you start thinking like, all right, like they really want me to buy the fast travel, don't they?
But see, that's the thing with Dragon's Dogma, right? It's not designed around the microtransaction. That's absolutely for sure. Like if you're trying to rush through Dragon's Dogma, like leveling up actually goes really fast. Like I think within the first 50 hours of playing, I had like all of the different classes that are available in the game, I had maxed out. And same with like my pawn, who also has to level up their classes. That was also maxed out. And it's like one of the biggest things in Dragon's Dogma is gold. Obviously, there are no microtransactions for gold. And like gold is so essential for so many things in the game. And you only get gold by going out and playing the game, exploring, doing various things. Because like when you're traveling around the world, you'll come across like random NPCs and they'll be like, hey, escort me to this destination. And you'll get different things like that. And like gold is used to buy the fairy stones so you can actually fast travel. Or you can spend gold at certain towns which have ox carts, which actually it's fast travel. You get in the ox cart and it'll take you to the next town over. And it's like it's I don't know, it's just weird, right? Like Dragon's Dogma is a game that's all about exploring and going out and having a good time and fighting big monsters. Not to mention like, you want to upgrade your weapons and stuff. You need to be killing stuff to get those upgrades, so you can upgrade those weapons, upgrade those armors so you can get more powerful. Because like if you just try to rush through the game, like you will get absolutely murdered. Like, you will just get absolutely slaughtered. Like, it's not a hard game, but it's a hard game if you try to rush through it. Like, the game is pretty much designed like, hey, if you want to try to go towards the end game areas, it's gonna be a chore, and you're gonna get slaughtered for doing it, and you're gonna be punished. Like, it's just it really does feel like the microtransactions were just put in for the sake of being put in, and plus, like I said, it's they're not even really microtransactions. They're the deluxe edition add-ons that they just kind of spewed out and like, well, I guess if people want to buy them separate, they can. Like, I don't know, it's weird.
So there's something that I think about pretty recently. A friend of mine actually kind of got me thinking on this. So in Dragon's Dogma 2, doesn't sound like the microtransactions are nearly as bad as they were made out to be. But I also think about, Slippery Slope, which y'all mentioned as well. Look at mobile, like mobile games just as a whole. When was the last time you kind of just installed a mobile game and it was just a game? Like, I know of like a small handful of developers that just give you the game. Like, I think Kairosoft does complete games. Slay the Spire, granted that's the game. I think that's Megacrit who made that. That game's complete, but like
Yeah, that
those
was
are
just a Steam
exceptions
game that got
overall.
ported to mobile, though.
Yeah. So the thing I think about is I worry that a lot of, especially the bigger studios that are a lot more corporate. Capcom is, I mean, I still remember Street Fighter Cross Tekken with the whole gym system thing and the on disc DLC, right? I do think that a lot of these bigger studios would absolutely move closer to mobile if they know that they can, right? To me, one of something that's important to me is pushing back. And I'm not saying, don't buy it. If it's worth it to you, definitely buy it. And I'm very glad that you're having a good time with it. I'm not arguing against your purchase or anything. This is just kind of where my mind
No.
goes. I worry about more and more mobile monetization creeping into games, right? Like skins have even become a problem. I mean, back in the day, you had Halo 4 with I think they called it like the Champions Pack, where you had like the ODST armor and a couple other things. And then now look at Infinite. You can't even change your color now, right? You have to buy that for the most part. They give you some free ones, of course, but it's rough. And there's a lot of games like that. Call of Duty, granted, you never really had character customization. I think the first game that did that was Ghosts. But now you look at the shop, and I mean, they're adding what are they called? Cheech and Chong. I haven't seen that movie, but they're adding Snoop Dogg into Call of Duty, and it's like you can kind of see where the end point is for a lot of these games. It you go from really good games have this awesome design, like Call of Duty 4, for example, and then now you end up with, Modern Warfare 3, Warzone, and it's kind of just this weird mess of like, hey, spend your money, and I can't help but think about that a lot these days. Especially with Capcom, because like they've shown us already, like, hey, we will nickel and dime you if we can. Come buy our characters, which you already paid for on the disc, but for the little JSON file, you got to give us money for it. It's like it's really dicey. That's one thing for me. Like, knowing that these companies are more focused on the profit than the product, it is a really tough sell for me, especially now at $70.
Yep,
And
and
I know,
hey, that's
yeah.
completely. I was just
Sorry, I
gonna
didn't
say
mean to
that's
interrupt you.
completely understandable, and I think the other
Yeah.
important thing is, no, you're good. Don't worry about it. We do that all the time. But anyways, so like one of the biggest things too, I think people need to understand, and everyone needs to understand this when they're talking about these conversations, is it's okay to like something like Dragon's Dogma
Oh,
2 or Street Fighter or whatever, and criticize the microtransactions. Like, people act like you have to love everything about a game and defend it, or hate everything about the game and not like any of it. Like, people act like you can't you can't sit in the middle or have like a nuanced conversation like, hey, I love this game, but I can acknowledge everything that's wrong with it. Like, there's nothing wrong with having an opinion like that. Like, it's okay to not blindly love everything or hate everything. Like, actually form an opinion. Don't just follow a mob. Like, actually sit down and think about what you're looking at, and then, you know, put some thought into it, for God's sakes, because it's crazy how people just like gang up, or they grew up like, hey, we're on this side, we're on this side. There's no meeting in the middle. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's just ridiculous.
You
when it
you
comes,
mentioned actually. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
I,
you. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when it comes to this whole like microtransaction discussion, and I've mentioned this before, probably on the podcast, but I do think the solution really is as simple as people just not spending money. I mean, like you mentioned, it kept you away from Dogma 2 because of the microtransactions. And I mean, I'm not saying it's an easy solution to get everyone to collectively not spend their money on microtransactions, but I think that's it. I mean, of course, you're still going to have the whales. You're still going to have people that want to spend money on this stuff. But if all the people that don't like microtransactions stopped spending money on microtransactions, I think you solve the issue right then and there. It is really that simple. But people just bitch about microtransactions and then keep buying them. And if you want to buy microtransactions, that's fine. Like, not everyone's trying to make a change here. Some people just, like a skin, they want to buy a skin. But it's like, when you keep complaining about it, and then you're also, part of the problem, it's just kind of weird.
Well, I think that's a thing too. A lot of younger kids, they've just grown up with microtransactions. That's all they know. Every game has microtransactions, so they just accept it and defend it. Where I think a lot of older gamers who didn't, they grew up like, hey, everything was in the game. All the skins, everything we can unlock was right for us, available to us if we wanted to earn it. So it's like you get this weird like division of like these new school gamers, I guess I'll call them, and the old school ones who are just kind of at each other's throats, because it's like there's no really meeting in the middle because of how both sides grew up playing video games. So it makes it so difficult.
I actually kind of do occupy that middle ground. Like I get tired of microtransactions, right? But like for me, it's a very like, what are you selling me kind of deal, right? Like I play Fortnite sometimes, and like I buy skins. I've got Fortnite crew or whatever, right? And to me, Fortnite crew is cool, and it's worth it because I'm getting like the battle pass. I'm getting skins every month, which is exciting too, right? But I mean, honestly, I mentioned Siege a little while ago. I would buy the yearly pass. To me, that was yeah, of course, I was getting the content within the pass, 4 characters a year, some exclusive skins, that sort of thing. But the other thing I thought about was like, well, this game is also getting regular updates. So to me, this is money well spent because I'm supporting the game. At the time I played it constantly. It's supporting the game, but it was also getting something out of it. So it kind of worked in that way. When I look at single player, that is kind of where it changes a little bit. Because whenever I spend money on single player, I'm expecting some form of content, right? Now, of course, I don't look at like, say, I don't know, old school DLC, like Mass Effect 2 or 3's DLC, right? If I spend $10, $15, I'm not expecting a fourth of the game because that's not how that works, right? But I was getting something. And even if it wasn't quite as good as the main game, it was still good. It was still more something I liked. But I would even honestly would rather have skins, at that point, right? Like skins are still a problem in a lot of cases, like in Call of Duty, but I'll take skins over weird shortcut things like any day, right? But something else I want to mention too is, of course, you had mentioned, covering the game. Something that I think would be really helpful, especially for me, because of course I got caught up in all the, conversation and missed what was actually going on. I think a breakdown of, hey, here's what you're paying for, and here's what you get, and kind of just because you're very good at, you like the game, right? And you're having a lot of fun with it, but you also see, hey, this may not be the best thing with the microtransactions too. So I think you'd be in a perfect place to go in and really break all this stuff down. What are the effects of being able to spend $1 or $2 here, and whether or not you could really help people like me better figure out like, hey, is this make or break for me? Because what I heard was definitely break, right? But you might break the stuff down. I might go, oh, okay, this is just this isn't as bad. I people were overreacting, and might turn that into a purchase.
Right.
Just an idea.
And to be clear, you wouldn't be somebody that I was talking about. Like when I mentioned, there's some people that don't like microtransactions, but they spend money on them because apparently you do like microtransactions. It's just some microtransactions. Like it depends. So yeah, if you like, if you do like microtransactions, I mean that's fair game. I was more like, talking about people that act like they hate microtransactions across the board.
Oh,
They
for
spend
sure,
a
for
shit
sure.
ton of money on it, So you
Oh,
wouldn't really
Just to be
fall in.
clear,
You wouldn't
Yeah.
fall into that. So
I don't
just
hate
wanted to
all
make that clear.
microtransactions either. There are good microtransactions and there are
Mhm.
bad microtransactions. It depends on the game, obviously.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like loot
Yeah.
boxes, I do not believe in loot boxes whatsoever.
Right.
Those can
hate
go to
those.
hell. Like I believe everything that you're buying should be
Yeah, let's bring them
exactly what
back.
you're looking at.
Dude, people
Come on,
unironically
rec
ask for
packs.
rec packs back, and I actually like
That's
get
what that's
a
got.
brain aneurysm every time I see that take.
What?
Well,
Have you not seen that
I
on
think what
Twitter?
they're doing.
I haven't. I
Oh
haven't
my
seen that
lord,
at
dude,
all.
yeah, I see it like
I think
Wow,
they
not
I
super
just see it
often,
as
but
better. Well, because when you had rec packs, you could change the color of your armor.
sure.
I think that's kind of like that's the bargain. They're like, please
Well,
just go back. Like
Maybe
anything
they
is
just-
better
the
than
thing with
this.
rep packs is
You could also
still
earn
earn
'em,
them without
yeah.
paying. Yeah.
There were
Mm.
like pros, but like I don't know, whatever. But
The problem I ran into was I play Halo 5 sometimes at this gamer bar back home. And so like I'd be several beers deep and I'm like, yeah, let's buy rec packs. Never a good idea, by the way, but that was the problem I kept running into, $3 here and
you
there,
get the
that might-
became like
$100
30.
bundle?
I think that might be a
$100
you
Never.
problem.
It was
No.
it wasn't me, bro. I don't drink like that anymore. But it was like I like $3 myself to death. Like it was just like 3. It got a little rough for a while. But like yeah, I thankfully never got like
Hey,
too
don't
out of
feel bad.
control.
I had a guy that I know get his bank account shut down because they thought someone stole his credit card with all the rec packs he was buying.
Oh
So-
yeah, I never got that
Don't
bad.
feel bad.
Like
Bro, that's
I'd just be mad
something.
because I added like an extra 20 to my like to what I spent for the night. Yeah, that
Man, if people like rec packs so much, man, I got plenty that I can gift because I wasn't opening them.
You're hoarding? How
Yeah.
dare you? How
Yeah,
dare
I had
you?
a shit ton. I remember that like laggy animation that would happen when you opened it.
Oh god.
oh
So
god.
annoying.
I remember the whole meta
Uh,
game. Like you had to max out all the shitty packs first, so that when you open the
Mm.
expensive packs, you were more likely to get the good stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's
The
a whole game
bronze,
to
then the
it.
silver, then
Yeah,
the gold.
exactly. And you knew you were ready to move to the next level because you would start getting like some currency shit out of the pack, and that's how you knew you were ready to make the step up to the next one. 'Cause it was like,
Jeez, what the fuck was Halo 5, man?
yeah, dude, Halo 5 was a video
was
game.
something.
See, there was some strategy to the microtransactions.
You know what? In Infinite, there's no
Mhm.
strategy.
It was a
so
skill
that's-
gap.
I want my
Yeah.
It was a skill
microtransactions to
gap.
have skill. I want the fucking skill.
I want to find the Reddit
Right.
post that tells me exactly how to maximize my usage of microtransaction purchases. And Infinite, I'm not getting that, man. I just buy the skin from the store and it's like $30 for some reason. And it's like some
Not as
shit that I've
rewarding.
seen for 20 years. But all right, guys. We've been going
Missed the money meta game.
Yeah, all right. But yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, it's been like 2 hours. I think we wrap it up here. Agoat, I appreciate you for coming on. Excited to see more Ringfall and Installation 01. Probably on my side, more excited for that one than the former, but that's just because I don't really launch Infinite very much these days.
No, I
But-
don't blame you. I get it.
But yeah. So no, it was fun having you on, man. I hope you had a good time. We'll do a little round the square rectangle thingy goodbye. But Agoat, what should people look out for from you in the coming future?
Honestly, definitely that IO 1 update that everyone's been waiting for that I promised and super late on. And hoping to do the public release for Ringfall, if all goes well, within a week or so, maybe 2 weeks at the most. I'm trying to get that in people's hands as soon as possible. But also, thank you guys for having me on, by the way. This has been really, really cool.
Yes, thank you.
It's fun.
Jared, what are you up to? I think you already told us, but reiterate.
Oh yeah, obviously I got the Dragon's Fall, or Jesus, Dragon's Dogma 2 review on the way video. And then after that, I will probably be. There might be a couple smaller videos, and then I'll be doing a Stellar Blade next as a big video. So
Dude,
keep an eye
without
for
you,
that.
no one on the podcast would play all the fucking Japanese PlayStation games.
Hey, I'm playing Dragon's Dogma on Xbox. man.
All right,
It
but it's
actually runs
a
the
it's a
best
it's a
there, surprisingly.
Capcom game. All right, it falls into the same boat. All right, Pop
enough.
Q, what's on the docket?
I was going to say real quick, we don't have to talk about it, but I do think it's kind of crazy we didn't bring up the Marvel hero shooter.
We
But,
just ran
yeah,
out of time.
is that-
A
that was a
goat
thing,
went a
but-
little ham on Infinite, you know.
I'm
Dude,
a little chatty. That's my fault.
There's the shitty Marvel Heroes game. Fucking Suicide Squad had an update that looks atrocious. There's like all the Xbox rumors that like apparently, I don't know, third party devs don't want to make games for Xbox anymore. There's a lot of good
Right.
stuff, but maybe
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's starting to show people are getting bored of hero shooters. But I got some videos planned. Like I said, I've been playing Halo 2 Insignia, really enjoying it. So that'll probably be the next video, something related to that.
hell yeah. No, that's I'm actually like, I mean, Halo 2 obviously like it hits closer to home because it's Halo, but I'm just actually like I think I'm just at that point in life where just like seeing revivals of just old games just like is cool. Like even if it's not a
Yeah.
game that I played a ton of back in the day, but just like I don't know, I think like Insignia is still like so small, but I think it would be super cool to just see like a rotating like, you know, like as they add a new game, like it's populated for like a few weeks or a month, and maybe the biggest ones stay populated, but like it would be cool to just like relive the Xbox back library of Xbox Live games, like literally
Like
relive
a
my
club
childhood.
for games.
But yeah, no, we can quickly talk about the Marvel Heroes game. It looks like ass.
I actually
Yeah,
think it has some cool mechanics in it from the trailer.
Oh, get him out of here. Get him.
No, they got synergy abilities where two characters come together, like Rocket jumping on.
I
Groot's
did see
shoulder
that. There was
or
like the
doing
Groot
human
guy
attack.
that jumped on the other one, but like, dude, oh, man, I don't know, man. It looks like cheap. It looks like
Indestructible environments, man.
it looks like an off-brand version of Overwatch and Smite. Like somehow they like they combine. It's like a
Right.
third-person Overwatch. It looked cheap. I don't know, like. Hey,
Yeah, like the player movement looked bad.
yeah, like
Like, it
the
just didn't
movement
look
looked
good.
weird, but maybe it'll come out and be decent. But if I had to like put my money on it today, I would put my money on that game flopping. But
I'm just tired
Yeah.
of hero shooters.
I think
Same.
most people are.
Like,
I've never liked them. That's not even like a phase like I was in. Like there was a time where like I
Yeah.
really, I was into battle royale for a little bit. I was never into hero shooters. I've always hated this. Like I hate hero
I
shooters.
tolerated them. Like, that was it.
Mm.
Honestly, if you want a good Marvel game, go play Marvel vs. Capcom 3. That game is great. Super
The
recommend it.
fighting game.
Absolutely. That 10 out of 10. That game is the best.
No, I that actually is a good game, but it's just funny because it's like such a different genre. But
I absolutely still
yeah,
worth it though.
I don't know. It's funny because I saw a lot less like hatred toward the Marvel game, but like when that news came out that Marathon's doing classes, like everyone
yeah.
was bashing that. And dude, that was such a
Right.
bummer. The Marvel game makes sense. If you're gonna do a Marvel multiplayer shooter, it should probably be a class-based shooter because you have to use the superheroes. Otherwise, what's the point? But like, dude, that Marathon news has me so I'm like. I've always been skeptical because it's obviously like modern Bungie isn't the Bungie that we put on a pedestal. Like they're not the Bungie that made Halo 2 and 3 and CE. But like even then, like even modern Destiny had its high points and stuff. And it's like I had faith that Marathon, it might not be like perfect, but I had faith that maybe it would be fun. But the more we see, the more like it seems to be in some weird development cycle. Like if it comes out, I'm not too hopeful it's a good game.
I checked out the moment we found out it was going to be a hero shooter. I went
Yeah.
from a cautious optimism to like, nah, I'm good. Like,
No,
I'm
and that's
not
the
even.
thing.
Yeah.
You see this pushback when people are hearing about Marathon being a hero shooter or the Marvel hero shooter. You see a lot of hatred for hero shooters, and a lot of people think like hero shooters are what gamers want nowadays. But I kind of feel like it's more just a result of that being the games we're getting. And like we are just getting a lot of hero shooters, like with Overwatch and Valorant and Apex. And honestly, I think all those games and other popular hero shooters could have been just as successful if they weren't hero shooters. I don't necessarily think all these people love hero shooters. Again, I think that's just kind of what we're getting.
I think people in general liked Overwatch, and they had fun with it. And then like ever since, it has just been like, okay, I'll tolerate this part of the game because I like how the rest of it feels. Like, I think
Like,
the
would
only
people-
exception to that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're good.
I was gonna say I think the only exception to that I think is Valorant, maybe. And like I'm
Valorant's
not
solid.
like I play it from time to time, and I can kind of see that the agents are like they're a vehicle for just
Bullshit.
adding weird gadgets. Yeah, I mean bullshit, right?
The new character
You know, you
fucking
can't-
revives itself, Agoat. You kill her, or
Yeah, that one-
you kill
well,
them.
that's the problem.
I apologize.
Yeah.
This has been a struggle. But you
What?
kill them, and then they revive themselves, and then like if they do enough damage within X, or if they have to do damage within a certain amount of time, and then if they do, they get to stay alive. Otherwise, they die again. It's bullshit.
I don't think I've seen that one. Oh.
It just
You've
came
gotten to
out
the
like
weird part.
this week.
You've gotten to the weird part where like the original roster, and even for a little while, like interesting characters, and they weren't too out there. Like characters had different styles of smokes. Some had teleports, and you're like, okay, cool, we'll deal with it. And now we've hit the point where it's like we're out of ideas, so here's random bullshit go, and that sucks. That's the worst part of the genre is like when they're out of ideas. Siege has the same problem, and it sucks.
Yeah, no,
And I think like the developers might feel like they have to keep, one-upping themselves and actually, make these new characters really exciting. Like if they were to introduce like a Phoenix, if you know his character from Valorant, if they were to introduce him as a new character now, I think it would be, kind of lame because of his abilities aren't anything too special.
Yeah, I agree. Usually the trajectory of a hero shooter or just hero based video game is like the core roster makes sense. They all have an identity and a role, and over time they just become like wackier and wackier. I mean, you see that in all of them. You see that in League of Legends. You're gonna start seeing that in Valorant. You've seen it in Siege. We've seen it in Apex. Like, because they have to keep ramping them up, because you can't just like, you run out of basic ideas. Like, you can only have like, Phoenix is fire dude with flashes, right? Reyna is just like snowball-y heal herself girl. Sage is the healer that puts up a wall, right? They're like pretty basic ideas. Or Sova's like the scout, right? But then as you go on, you're like, oh, we need another duelist. Well, we already have a duelist that has a rocket launcher. We already have a duelist that does fire stuff. Like, we already have one that's pretty basic. So how do we change it up? Well, we'll have a duelist that has aim labs built in, and you can ult people into a 1v1 arena. So like, you have to come up with like crazier
It's the
ideas to
gulag.
make them unique. Yeah, it just spawns you into the gulag mid round.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's one of the biggest problems with hero shooters is like on launch, I feel like they make sense, and you're like, oh yeah, this isn't too bad, but they just get worse and worse over time. Plus, there's the whole thing where like Marathon, it's probably a hero shooter so they can sell you fucking skins, right? Whereas if it was like a true extraction shooter and you like looted all of your equipment, well then they can't sell you skins. So if they lock it to characters, they sure can. All right. Well, you want to one last thing?
I just feel like they need to plan an endpoint for characters and then just support the game and just make it better.
Yeah.
They're already selling skins for knives or what, $60 or something.
Oh, dude, Valorant skins are insane.
And people buy them. Like, they've got money coming in. I don't know. That's it. Stop. Just have an endpoint.
I wish Valorant would do not that I think they make good maps, because I honestly think the maps in that game are honestly pretty ass. But I wish they would do more maps instead of characters, because like they've added more characters into the game since launch than maps, and I feel like with an FPS, like a tactical FPS like that, it should be flipped. Like add more maps with like maybe one character a year if we have to have a new character. But the thing is, like the new character probably drives money, or maps don't, right? Because like when they drop Clove, you can buy Clove, but like if they drop a new map, you can't buy a new map. You can also buy skins for Clove and all that stuff. So they don't really do like character skins, I guess, in Val. They just do weapon skins, but which makes sense as first person. Yeah. But you know, then again, there's Halo, so we play Spartan dress up in Halo. So
yeah, that's fair. On a dragon.
Yeah, I mean, all right, everyone. I think that'll do it for the old pod. Appreciate everyone for listening. I'll probably have the VOD up tomorrow on the YouTube channel, so throw some support over there. If you've been listening, maybe just let it run, you know, get some watch time in there. All right, appreciate everyone for watching. I think we'll be back in a couple weeks. Goodbye.
Later.